Creating a Podcast. Join 3 international students from Romania, Sierra Leone, and Rwanda as 3 journalists work together on the ins and outs of podcast creation.
Why podcast? What's the point of podcasting? Well, we feel it's all about getting personal stories out there, stories that often aren't covered in the mainstream media, stories that only you could tell, another journalist wouldn't have that story. And podcasting is a really simple, cheap, efficient way of getting stories out globally.
I have a lot of stories to tell, and even before like hearing anything about podcasts, something that I always wanted to do on my own. But then, for me, I feel like sometimes it just takes courage and the perseverance in starting something.
That's why I'm here, to see whether I could get some tips from the people that have done it and maybe even start my own.
Great. Well, you have a fabulous voice for podcasting, Queen, let me say.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm one of the coordinators for my school's newspaper. And we did plan to open a podcast for the school.
I'm just going to play you a few seconds of an example of a podcast that we made at Podium. This was a young man who felt that all the media coverage about lockdown was negative, about how terrible it was that we were all locked in our houses. But he found that a lot of his friends were doing really positive things and actually enjoying that time. So I just want to play a little bit from that.
Hi there, everyone. I'm Cameron Dasgupta, and welcome to my podcast. In today's podcast, we'll be focusing on the positive experiences people have had during this lockdown. Now, the reason why I've decided to talk about this topic is because the news and just the energy has been very negative when surrounding quarantine. And whilst the negativity is justified, given, how stressful it can be, I still think it's really important for us to look at the bright side of lockdown and the sort of interesting experiences people may have had, whether it be by themselves or with their families. Therefore, I've spoken to my friends about their experiences during lockdown to find out what they've been getting up to and what they have learned. So firstly, I got my friends to just introduce themselves, and then I asked them to discuss any hobbies that they may have participated in during lockdown. Therefore, the first guest on my show is Joseph. Here's his response to my questions.
My name is Joseph. I'm 20 years old. I'm studying computer science at the University of Surrey. And a new hobby I've picked up during this lockdown has been yoga. So my 30-day yoga challenge began when I was feeling pretty lethargic one morning, and I thought, okay, let me do something that might change that. So I found something online. I just thought it was going to be like a 10-minute thing, but it turned out that was the start of a yoga challenge that this YouTube channel was creating. And each day I did it every morning, which exercised different parts of the body. And so you're able to get a full view of how well it did for, physical and mental well-being. My auntie is a yoga teacher, so I knew that there were some connotations within the family there.
One thing that I have done during lockdown, which was pretty creative, was I upcycled a bench that my mum and I found that was beyond usable, and we redone it up and it looked amazing. And not only did we feel like we achieved something, we created memories by upcycling it together, and I really loved doing it. And it was just something different that you wouldn't do on a normal day of your life.
So you get the idea. So he came up with an idea. He found a few people to interview. He was able to record it all remotely because we were locked down. And it was just a really nice little example of something that, he felt strongly about and wanted to share. So that's the sort of type of thing that we do. But it could be on a really serious topic. It could be somebody's personal story of their life. It could be anything at all. And we want you to be able to, plan and think about, what would work for your context.
Sometimes I think, well, what do I want to learn more about? And who can I ask the questions to? And there's so many people who would love to talk to you. And just in the conversation, you're learning and you're making content that other people will learn from.
So if you're just walking around and you're seeing somebody who's doing something really interesting and you're like, whoa, I've never actually heard their story, like it might be really obvious to you, you could go up to them and say, I'd like to know a little bit more about what you're doing, and it could turn into a really great story.
So I've done like little interviews like that. I think it's pretty cool. You learn a lot of things about people.
I want to have a podcast. I would love to have a podcast. But then the reason why I'm not even starting or having a hard time even thinking of a way to start is because I feel the need to have a broader picture of what my podcast should be about and limit that or even broaden my conversations to that particular thing. Is it how you do it? Did you find out your voice or what you want to talk about after a couple of interviews, or did you first set what type of interviews you want to be having?
What was your idea? Did you want to do just like one podcast episode, or did you want to do like many episodes essentially?
Ideally, there would be many, but
Many
the
episodes.
selection of the broad topic is what's the issue.
Stories that you could tell within Christianity. You could talk about different scripture, or you could talk to somebody who's a really great leader in your community, for example. But I would say if you were to do one podcast, then you would need to refine it a lot more. And we'll be doing a lot of like work on that in the next few sessions as well. So I think
one can start with a broad theme of it's inspiring stories from people, and then there will be hundreds of inspiring stories, different type, and then over a period of time you might realize that okay, I would want to focus on inspiring sports persons across the globe. You can have one mini series on sports, one mini series on environment, one mini series on something else, dancers, arts, painters, so just as an example.